Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information. Callum, welcome to the podcast, mate. It's great to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on, Owen. Cheers.
That's good, mate. You're the first cab off the rank, a guinea pig, if you will, for these new episodes that we're trying to bring out, which is just to hear from people that hear the show and to just understand the journey of what most of us are going through. And today's all about just hearing about your journey, how you discovered finance and investing, how you kind of navigate that now, and where you want to go in the future. And, I think we're going to talk a little bit about property and shout out to the guys at Flint who do our mortgage broking, both of us in this instance. But maybe we'll just go back to the start. When you were younger, was finance, investing, and these types of things, was this something that you guys talked about at home? Was this something that you were familiar with from a young age, or not really?
Oh, look, first and foremost, Mum and Dad gave us a really good lives growing up. Grew up down south in Margaret River, so nice. God's country down there. So, yeah. Look, with regards to like the financial component of it, I guess that probably the biggest lesson that me and my brother learned from Mum and Dad was, I guess, to be frugal with your money. So to be careful where you spent it, and they were fairly adverse to debt as well. So debt was kind of seen as like a not really a bad thing, but I guess something that you wanted to avoid. And I guess that might have come from their experiences as being younger as well. They certainly wanted to pay off the property, as soon as they could, and still provide for myself and my younger brother. So, I guess, to the extent with regards to, that finance or money was a part of our lives growing up, it was mainly just around, be grateful for what you've got, and then also be careful how you spend it as well. So, it was always about putting money into the piggy bank as a kid, so that was kind of the first exposure that we really got, was literally at the hard, piggy bank that you sort of sat on your bedside table or on your chest of drawers, and it would just be like, dropping some money in there and waiting for it to get quite heavy until you could, crack it open and spend it on what you wanted to spend it on. So that I guess sort of provided me the basics, and I guess provided me the insight into what I really sort of took forward until quite recently, into my early 30s, about sort of saving money and then spending it wisely, and also avoiding debt as well, which I'm sure we'll get to in the next couple of questions as well. So that was kind of the first exposure that we had.
Were your parents the type of parents, like, they seem like they're pretty pragmatic type people, were they the types of people that warned you about credit cards or those types of things?
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, Mum was a nurse, and also, Mum is a nurse still, and runs her own small business down there. So shout out to Margaret River Holistic Health. So if you're down that way, give her a shout out. And then Dad was a bricklayer as well, and look, he worked really hard for his money, like any bricklayer does, or any tradie. So they both definitely put in the hours, put in the hard labour as well. So I guess that's why they wanted to make sure that they looked after what they earned. Yeah, and made sure that went a long way as well for themselves and also for us. Yeah,
bloody oath. How about, we'll come to what you do in a minute, but how about when it comes to consuming information to learn about investing, to learn about finance, to go beyond that kind of setting? I don't believe you studied a finance degree or something like that, did you?
No, I didn't study any finance or accounting degree, unfortunately. Wish I did, because it can be, there's a lot of jargon out there, 100%, and I'm sure you see that with a background in that. Look, I did do an MBA, which did give me some exposure to finance and accounting. Those were, unsurprisingly, those are the two subjects that I struggled with the most. But at least it gave me the basic sort of insight into sort of how companies, organizations, financial management, all that sort of stuff, accounting. But yeah, look, how did I sort of get my head around it, or how did I sort of start to learn about it? It was just a lot of self-knowledge, to be honest with you. It was just self-research, listening to podcasts like your own, listening to a few other podcasts as well, like the Equity Mates guys, and just kind of surrounding yourself as best as you can in 2024 or, in the 2020s. You got access to podcasts, you got access to YouTube, you got access to this array of information. I guess it just comes down to just picking out the things that appeal to you the most and that you can really resonate with, and then virtually surrounding yourself with that information where you can acquire it over a longer period of time as well.
Yeah. Do you remember if it was, this is something self-serving for me, Matt, do you reckon you listened to Equity Mates first or Rask first? I'll let them know if you choose Rask.
Look, I think they just pipped you.
Okay.
So
I'll say thanks to them.
Yeah, jumped onto them. Probably back in 2020.
Right.
So that's kind of when I actually did start diving into my own just into finance, really, into personal finance, into wealth creation, into all that sort of stuff. I guess what sort of sparked that or ignited that was the COVID crash. And I thought, all right, well, I've had a crack at investing, back in 2016, 2017. That didn't go well. 2020 thought it was a good opportune time to make most of the crash, even though I wanted to take a very cautious approach. And basically by the time I got back into it, it was like, sort of June, July. So look at the, I'm sure if anybody that's listening looks at the charts of when the crash happened and when it recovered, definitely missed the boat there. So
that's all right, mate. You probably got the rest of your life for compounding.
Yeah.
So you're fly in, fly out. Do you consume like a lot of do you choose to consume podcasts because you're at the mine side, or you're out, rural or driving or whatever?
I listen to probably a silly amount of podcasts and financial podcasts, and yes, I definitely have a few on the go on the iPhone there. And look, I'm kind of one of those strange people that I'll listen to like some financial podcasts while I'm in the gym going for a run. So I can be listening to yourself on Rask or the Equity Mates guys, or even Motley Fool or something like that, and I'll be trying to smash out a massive gym session as well. So sometimes it can.
Sorry about that.
Sometimes it can give you a good fire in the belly to push yourself a little bit harder. Don't get me wrong, I will listen to some heavy metal if I need that extra lift. But more often than not, I will sort of whack on a few podcasts. Look, I'm in the air a fair bit, so I jump on the plane. Fortunately, it's only a 1 hour flight to site where I work, and 1 hour back. So, but I'm doing that up and back once a week. So, do a lot of flying, obviously in the car a lot as well. And then whenever I've got spare time, I'll whack the earphones in and tune into a podcast. And again, it just comes down to whatever mood I'm in as well. Sometimes I listen to financial based podcasts, and sometimes just some other random ones as well. Joe Rogan, etc. Yeah,
of course. There's one more question on this, like how you get your information, but do you read books? And if you do, or if you have, like, you don't have to be like one of those people with like a book with legs, but like if you have read interesting books in the past, were there any that you could think of that were like more formative for you?
Oh, look, one that you've actually given mention to on this podcast or similar podcast before is Morgan Housel's The Psychology of Money. Yeah. I think that one was really interesting, relevant, all those things, and just a super simple read. Like I don't come from a financial background, obviously, but and I think I read that as soon as it came out, which might have been 2021, 2022. So still sort of just getting my feet into that sort of area. It's super easy to kind of grasp basic but really important concepts. Yeah. And it just distills that information down to really what's important. It's not talking about, intrinsic rate of return or net present value or anything like that, or it doesn't have any sort of financial data or anything like that. It's just simple basic principles that you can take from that and apply to essentially, your investing journey, your property journey, and just really sort of your financial journey as well in life, which I think was really important to myself.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable book. Definitely one of the best probably written ever, but definitely of the last 10 years. It's just unreal. And we were lucky enough to have Morgan on our finance podcast about that time. So question I like to ask, and I like to think of this myself, is like, what was the first investment you made? You said you invested in something in like 2016, 2017. I'm curious then if you talk about that, but also after COVID, like when you started getting back on the bandwagon, so to speak, like what you bought at that time versus what you bought earlier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, look.
And no shame, no judgment, just curious.
Might be a few people judging me here, but look, I'm fairly humble when it comes to this stuff, because I think you listen to these sort of podcasts and everybody has a story. And I guess my first story was, unfortunately learnt about hot copper. So I'm sure you can already see where I'm going with this. Learned about hot copper, and then, I was in my first job. So I started my first job in sort of 2014, 2015, and you start to acquire a bit of income, certainly more than you experience in the university days. Yeah. So you build up a bit of savings in the bank, and then you start thinking, all right, I'll have a crack at this investing game. And at first, I literally thought it was like a casino and and it was a bit of a punt and a bit of a gamble. And I think there was one investment, and I was trying to think about it not too long ago. It was called like Mustang Minerals or Mustang Metals or something like that.
Yeah.
And back in 2016, 2017, obviously jump on the hot copper forums, and again, I'd rather give myself 50 uppercuts now, but literally, they were pumping this thing so hard, and you just thought, oh, like this is it. I'm gonna make it. Like I've put my $500 or $1,000 into this, and I'm going to retire by the age of 25. With the amount of stuff that you're reading off hot copper, and I think they were mining rubies or something like that, and then there was a blind auction and all this sort of stuff, and I was like, gee whiz, I thought I was going to make it, and sure enough I did, and the thing tanked and it just delisted, and I just lost. Fortunately I didn't lose a massive amount of money. It was a fair amount for me at the time. But yeah, at that point in time, it's a good lesson to learn. So essentially, I paid $1,000 for a really hard lesson, which I guess you take that these days.
Yeah, well, fair enough, mate. It actually, I just did check Mustang Resources. The ticker symbol was MUS, and one of the first results is from hot copper when I Google it. It is no longer trading. It's the bunch, but that's cool. Like that is fine. I mean, you treat it as a lesson learned, I guess. So if that was the first foray, where did you go later? Like even fast forward a few years, or even after COVID, where, take us on that journey.
Yeah, well, if you jump on that forum, you might see my name going, what happened to this back in 2017. But so anyway, I had a crack at Mustang and a couple of others, and they all burned anyway. So look, fast forward a good sort of, realistically sort of 4 years. And then obviously the COVID crash, and I remember seeing at the time, in the news, COVID crash, now's a good time to buy, all that sort of stuff. I started listening to that sort of stuff around that period of time. So I guess people with that were certainly a little bit more approachable with their investing journey, not just throwing money at hot mining stocks or anything like that. So, learned about ETFs. That was the next thing that I really sort of went down the rabbit hole on. Obviously didn't know what ETFs were back in 2016, 2017. And then just fortunately, once I did my own research after the COVID crash in that sort of mid 2020, because a lot of people had a lot more time to themselves. I was on working 3-in-1s that time, just due to the fact that we had to stay on site for a lot longer because of the obvious. So I had a lot more time to myself, and just went down the rabbit hole on ETFs and sensible investing. So I started to dollar cost average into some index tracking ETFs. So basically, it tracks the A200 or A300, VAS. So did that, and then obviously started tuning into yourself and also the Equity Mate guys that touched on earlier, and just start sort of building out that core and satellite approach. And that's realistically sort of the approach that I've been taking since that time. So for the past 4.5 years now. Building out the core, just dollar cost averaging into that consistently over a long period of time. And even in the past 4 years, starting to see the benefits of that. If you asked me in 2022 how it's going, I would have been going, gee whiz, I'm back at 2016 all over again. Because of what happened from 21 to 22. But it's just about playing the long game now and the slow game. And yeah, it is a boring game as well. But I'm sure when I'm 50 in 20 odd years time, give or take, sure that I'll definitely be reaping the dividends, excuse the pun, in around that period of time as well. So and then with the satellite approach, I just do my own research in that space. So I like to think I'm a little bit more mature with my investing now, and a little bit wiser and smarter with my money as well. And then, I listen to a few other people and also do subscribe to a couple of other subscriptions as well. So that certainly helps me pick out what I want to look at and what I'm interested in. And then it's just about being cautious with how I allocate that capital as well.
Yeah, cool. I was going to ask you about that. And obviously, when we talk about these things, there's no like recommendations. I just want to be really clear about for anyone listening. But I'm just curious to talk to people about these things because I don't know, for some reason they seem like they're often taboo topics, but I'm just curious, like what things do you use? Like what tools or resources do you use? Like I tell everyone what I use, but I'm just curious what other people are doing.
Oh, look, like I use a few different resources. So again, like, podcasts I think are really easy just because you can be doing something and still have them in your ear and listening and sort of tune in and tune out. So, one of the other podcasts I listen to is Ausbiz as well. And, sometimes I get some CEOs on, sometimes they get, they do a buy, hold, sell. And whilst that is not financial advice, it at least alerts you to some stocks that you might not have heard of. And that might, because otherwise you've got to really do your own research. And this is where I try and, I don't know, it's not cheating the system or anything like that, but I let other people do the hard work for me. And so, I'll listen to Ausbiz. I do subscribe to Strawman as well. So shout out to Andrew Page and
shout out.
So I've been a Strawman member since its inception. So,
wow. Long time user. Wow.
Yeah. So, cool. Inception with the premium model. So, but yeah, a few years now. So, do jump on that and have a crack at, putting up some straws and my thoughts on stocks as well. So, and again, that's a really friendly community. And again, that sort of does raise a few ideas, pitches, and just, again, general advice that you can take that from, one analyst or one person's assessment of an organization or a company, and you can apply that elsewhere. And so you build all this knowledge that you can just all of a sudden take and apply elsewhere. And then you can also build your own confidence with it as well. Yeah. And also, one of the biggest things about Strawman as well is it's not about pitching your ideas or anything like that, but it's just about like, this is what I think, this is my thesis on the company. Feel free to pick it apart because you want to learn those lessons as soon as possible, like I did with Mustang resources and all that. You want to learn those things as soon as possible so that if you are wrong, you can, sure enough, reallocate that capital elsewhere. But if you're right, then all of a sudden you can start to build a stronger position in something as well.
That's really refreshing to hear, and I'm sure if Andrew listens to this, he would be like really pleased with that because that's why I know you are exactly the reason why he set up that platform, mate. Because he had similar experiences and saw other people having similar experiences to that, where you go on those like kind of like anonymous online forums. And people just pump and dump stocks, like they're just talking them up and then they disappear. And whereas Strawman added the accountability by saying you have to publish something, you have to go on record. And by the way, we're going to track you as you go through, which is such an unusual thing, like to have that accountability when you talk about things online. But that's so the reason that we ended up having this chat today is because you also went on a property journey. So I'm curious how that came to pass.
Yeah. So, again, bit of a long run up with this one, but I was living in the same place in Perth for the best part of 14 years. So basically since 2010. So yeah, unfortunately my landowners were my folks. So got away with that with a few things there. And got some cheap rent early on in the days, but definitely made up for that at the back end of it. And look, met my now wife, Laura, and she moved over from Europe. So she is from cool. Eastern Europe, from Hungary. So she moved over here in 2018, and we found our footing in Perth, and she found her footing more than anything else. And then, yeah, sure enough, we were always talking about have our place and all that. So we started working towards that. Well, look, to be honest with you, I was working towards that for quite a long period of time, even before I met Laura. But when she did move over here, that's when we sort of started to put the afterburners on with regards to just shoveling money into a high interest savings account. And then obviously COVID happened, and basically those 2 years just were essentially lost. And I like to think about macro probably more than I should. So I thought, with the COVID downturn and all that, I thought, recession's guarantee here. I was like, we are, I've got some savings. I was like, we're on, like, with regards to the property market in Perth. And I was so wrong. I was so wrong. And I kept waiting. And I thought, gee whiz, do property prices go down? Like, what is this? Like, and yeah, so sure enough, like, I think it was sort of, we got married about this time last year. And it's basically, just the law of averages and the way that things work out is, you get married, you find your own place, you start a family, etc. So definitely the next cab off the rank for us was finding a place. And as soon as we got married, late last year, started looking for a place pretty aggressively, certainly at the start of this year. And at first I basically contacted a few banks myself, and just the admin side of things there was just overwhelming. Trying to communicate with a couple of different banks, trying to get better rates, et cetera. So that was purely for pre-approval. Sorry. So trying to get pre-approval as we were looking at houses, and then listen to yourself, and you at the same time you're obviously doing a fair bit of work with Rask and now Flint, and so I jumped straight onto a referral code there. So thanks very much for that. And look, sure enough, Flint, basically just, I contacted them and they were super helpful. So I jumped straight onto the front foot with regards to getting us a really competitive rate at that point in time. And then also just the communication I had between myself and them, and also with Laura as well. It was fantastic. So we were able to get a competitive rate, get pre-approval fast tracked, and then sure enough, managed to start having a go at a few properties as well, with cool. The backing of the pre-approval, which is obviously certainly required these days in this market. Second, well, not the second house we looked at bloody hundreds, it seems. Second house we put an offer in. We managed to get that.
Great.
We were stoked. All in all, the whole process from basically go to woe was just, it took a lot off my hands, but you were still involved in the process throughout the whole basically, start and finish. I was super thankful to have them.
That's
on
great.
The team.
I went through, like, I've shared my journey on the show a few times, but I had a few issues because of I run the business and all that sort of stuff. It was just a bloody nightmare. So most banks probably wouldn't ever have lent me any money, but that's why and I was such a fierce, like, back in the day, I think I read the Barefoot book. No offense to Scott by this, but I read the Barefoot book and it was like, oh, you can do it yourself. Just go to the bank. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the bank and do it myself. And then everyone started knocking me back and I was like, oh shit. And that's when I then just realized I could just get someone else and let them do it for me. It's interesting what you say about property, because I remember at the time there were a lot of people saying, like in the newspaper and stuff, and they tend to get the column and they get the editor's pick in the emails, and they get all like the really good spots on the media bandwagon, and they're like, property price is going to crash. I remember CBA came out and said property price is going to fall 32% or something crazy, and I was like, that doesn't seem to make sense to me, because from where I am, like, there are no houses available. And people are going to have the same amount of money. So I was like, and it's interesting that you said, like, you were waiting for it to fall. What I've found, not just in property, but in most things over time and things that I've studied, is the fall tends to be a lot quicker than people realize. Even if it's like a longer term one, you could go back to like the 1920s or 30s when there's the Great Depression, and that drew on for like 5-6 years. But for most of them, they're not that long. And what that normally means is you kind of got to do the work before the crash rather than in it, if that makes sense. And that was definitely the case with like the V-shaped recovery in the stock market, but then also in property, like the way property prices, they didn't even really fall. They just kind of took off. It was kind of the opposite.
Yeah, I didn't see any fall. Still haven't. Still waiting for that one.
Especially in Perth, man, because the prices have gone nuts since you've purchased. You would, I'm assuming that you would even be well and truly into equity by now, like well and truly. So
no, we're hopeful that's the case. We've done a fair bit of work to the property as well. So I think now that we are homeowners, kind of like don't want the property market to crash now.
Do everything you can.
Literally, as soon as settlement comes around, you are like all of a sudden you want the whole thing to crash beforehand, and then as soon as settlement's like, no, just keep going up now, just keep going up.
Totally, that's fair. Yeah, because there's a lot of, as we know from our friends in Parliament, there's a lot of incentive to keep things as they are. So, as we come to the end of this chat, mate, I do want to just think about like where you are thinking of going next from here, like, and just trying to understand where you're at. Like, we spoke before about some of the different things you might be doing, but I'm curious to know, and I'm sure listeners will be curious to know, like now that you've got to this kind of yardstick, which is what kind of property ownership does, it's like a milestone for most of us, but where do you think you'll take your finances from here? Like, what are you exploring? What's currently on your mind?
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of things on my mind at the best of times. But like I think a lot of people, once they do get into property, it's kind of like, it's just about paying down the mortgage. And look, if that's what suits them, absolutely. Like, whatever you're comfortable with, like go for it. I think I'm a bit more of that sort of that old El Paso ad where it's just like, why can't we do both? Like, so I would like to, I guess, longer term, like, the aim of the game is here, like, if we set out sort of 20 years in the future, it is about sort of, all right, let's drag that debt level down. And I think that's probably, from the way I was brought up as a kid, and then also the way I approach things now is like, okay, let's really try and build that, drag that debt level down, but then also still keep putting money away for the future as well. So it's about still, dollar cost averaging into that core portfolio, and still picking out hopefully some winners as well over the longer term, and then also still working towards supporting a family as well. By the end of the day, we're certainly planning for a family over the next sort of 2 to 5 years. So that's the aim of the game. There's a couple of other things that I'm thinking about in that whole space as well, with regards to debt recycling is a bit of a buzzword that goes around, certainly on financial podcasts and around forums and whatnot. So that is something that I've reached out to a financial advisor about, and I'm also speaking with Flint as well. So again, that just shows the benefits of a good quality mortgage broker there as well. And just similar to the way I took my sort of financial journey as well, just a bit of my own research as well into that space, and taking a very cautious approach, because again, we're talking more debt here. I am fortunate in the fact that I do have a share portfolio, which I've been sort of managing for the best part of 4 years, and that has a little bit of equity in it, not a massive amount, but has a little bit there. So yeah, it's about potentially utilizing that share portfolio, especially the equity in it, and then seeing if I can drag that, the debt level down against the house, and I guess repurposing that into another mortgage, and just doing it in a smarter way for myself over the longer term. It seems to be a smart way to do it.
Yeah. On paper, it's like, and because you emailed me.
Yeah.
After I wrote about this on the weekend, because this is what kind of like we're going through in a slightly different way, but it's definitely something that a lot of people are talking about right now. Is like, how do you capture some of the value that might be embedded in your property and then use that in tax efficient ways, particularly if people think that interest rates will drop in the future, or if there's a way that people can position themselves now. That's becoming more and more popular. We did talk about this off air, but I will ask you, so for everyone else's benefit, when you thought about doing that, what was your first instinct? As in, when you thought, maybe I just heard such and such talk about this on a podcast or in a forum, what was the first professional that you thought you would reach out to? I'm curious, like who you thought could help you in that regard.
It was, I wasn't sure. So it was a lot of confusion at first. And I was I think it did get mentioned to me throughout the home loan process as well, throughout the application process. So it did get, because obviously you've got to disclose, your income, your finances, obviously all your assets as well. And it did get mentioned to me throughout that process. And I kind of just said, look, let's just focus on getting this pre-approval pushed through so we can jump onto this house, blah, blah, blah. But the first, the first professional that did sort of jump to mind was a financial advisor. So I did reach out to Bold Wealth there, and I've had an initial conversation with them, with a subsequent one coming up. But yeah, again, look, I wasn't really sure. Like, do you speak to a financial advisor? Do you speak to your mortgage broker? Do you speak to a tax accountant? And it's kind of like, I think you need to speak to a range of them to understand how it fits your circumstance in particular. And also how you can apply that efficiently as well, because it's going to be different person to person, situation to situation. So so I'm basically pursuing all those avenues to make sure that I can get a very holistic and rounded approach to that.
Yeah, and particularly with something like debt recycling, I find that it's one of those things that you kind of do need a bit of everyone, or you definitely need like the mortgage broker, because that you kind of need to step in and help you if like that. If you're going through that process like I am, but then the other one is like the accountant from a tax perspective and ensuring that you've set it up correctly so that, this is the tax deductible component. And if you invest in, not saying that you are, but if anyone invests in property, then you've got an investment property, which has a depreciation, which has all these other random things that come along with it. So that's where the good accountant comes in. And we do get that a lot, actually. It's like, which one do I go with? And then there's some advisors that don't do it. Like they just philosophically don't deal with like gearing strategies or leverage strategies. Most do, but like the ones in retirement, for example, wouldn't. So yeah, it's hard to know and to navigate through that.
And also, capital gains tax as well. That's something else you've got to account. Like, I've been actively investing now over the past 12 months. Have made some wins on some investments in the last 12 months. So you do need to think about, what are the implications for your capital gains tax as well. So again, that's where a tax accountant comes into it. So. Yeah.
Do you use any of the subscriptions like ShareSite or Navexa or any of those?
Got ShareSite. Yeah. Yep. So I found that probably 2 or 3 years ago. Again, through a referral code through, I think, yourself or Strawman as well. So that's been an absolute godsend, because I've been doing my own tax for the best part of, the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And that's definitely been helpful. Press one button and basically, up comes your report, which is fantastic, rather than trying to track it in a spreadsheet, which, don't get me into spreadsheets, which is, definitely. Pain is one word for it.
Yeah, that's fair, mate. I've got one final question, pardon me if I may, which is one thing that I do ask all of our guests over on our Investors podcast, because I think this is kind of a chance for self-reflection generally as well, is like, if you could go back in time and do one thing differently, like if you could say, Callum, like, don't do that, man, or do this, like, what would that be if you could?
Oh, look, there's many things, and especially outside the financial space, that's for sure. I do a few things, especially after 2 a.m. and a few beers. But thinking about it financially, look, it would just be start early. And when I mean start early, it's not just about start early dollar cost averaging into an index tracking fund or with regards to adding to super. It's about starting early with regards to building up that knowledge base so that you can apply that learning across a number of different things. And look, that might be start early investing. It might be, start early thinking about, property ownership or home ownership as well. Nobody has a crystal ball. So it's really just about sort of positioning yourself as best as what you can. And you can't position yourself unless you give yourself some knowledge, some understanding, and you basically invest in yourself over that period of time. So that's what I would tell myself, along with, maybe some winning lotto numbers and
of course,
get into Bitcoin in 2012 or whatever. So there's a bit there, but it's just about, apply the knowledge and build your understanding is what I'd really sort of focus on.
Yeah, for sure. Particularly when you're younger, you don't have necessarily the money, so you do have more of the time, or at least you do relatively to someone a bit older than you. That's great, man. You've come up with so many good anecdotes and ideas for people, and I think it's really refreshing to hear this. And I don't get a chance to speak to sounds weird for most people, but I don't get a chance to chat to a lot of people who use the Rask network and our services, but also all the people in our orbit, because a lot of it's just sat behind a mic, dealing with the team. Well, wonderful, of course, but dealing with that and then in front of the camera. Like, I don't actually get out and chat to a lot of people. So this is like awesome. It's actually like, it like recharges me. So I really do appreciate that you did take the time out to share some of this with us. And when we get over to Perth later this year, hopefully won't be 2 a.m., but maybe we can have a beer or a Pinot or something from the Margaret River region when I get over there, mate. So thanks for joining me.
Nah, no problem at all, Owen. Thanks for having me on, mate. And just let us know when you're over this way, and I'll give you all the good places to go to down south for sure.
Sounds good, mate.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Legend. Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.